When most of us think of the Renaissance, we imagine a time of grace, beauty, and refinement. But did you know that some of the most iconic masterpieces of the era were actually the subjects of massive scandals at the time? In fact, one particular painting that we consider iconic now was a threat of being hidden, destroyed, or even burned when it was first revealed. But what was that painting? Who painted it? And what did it show that infuriated people so much? The painting, of course, is Sandro Botticelli's masterpiece, The Birth of Venus. And we are going to talk about those questions and so much more in today's video. So without further ado, let's get into it. The origins. Nowadays, the painting and its Italian creator, Botticelli, are synonymous with the classical Renaissance. However, many people don't know that Botticelli was actually a goldsmith before he ever turned to painting. And being born in the middle of the 15th century in Florence, he was at the heart of the Renaissance art movement, in which artists across Italy were trying to rediscover ancient Roman and Greek artistic techniques. And it was there that Botticelli first started to paint and eventually made a name for himself as a painter of graceful portraits and Christian iconography, like the Adoration of the Magi or the Mystical Nativity, two of his other famous paintings. This is why when he was hired by the famous Medicis of Florence for a painting to be placed in their palace, people expected another graceful, dignified painting. But what he eventually created, while probably his most graceful work, was anything but the norm when it came to its subjects. So let's talk about these things, shall we? The subject. The painting, as the name suggests, depicts the goddess Venus Anadyomene as she emerges from the ocean after being born fully grown. Visually, the painting shows the nude goddess standing on top of a seashell as she reaches the shore. Although she is not clothed, her hair covers her private parts, almost as if she was wearing a traditional Greek gown. On the left side of this newly born and grown-up Venus, the god of wind, Zephyrus, is shown to be blowing wind in her direction, which is shown through radiant and visible lines coming out of his mouth. He also carries another figure, the wind nymph Chloris, who is blowing a lighter, milder, and less violent breeze towards the goddess. And from the look of it, both of them are doing this to blow Venus and her shell towards the shore. On the right of the goddess are two other female figures, one of whom is holding a cloth with her arms spread, signaling that she is waiting to cover Venus in clothes when she reaches the shore. This figure is usually identified as Hore, who is a minor Greek goddess of the seasons and is considered one of the many attendants of Venus. This, of course, is a depiction of the myth that details how Venus, or as she was known by the Greeks, Aphrodite, was born. According to Greek customs, Venus is the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility, and was born fully grown out of sea foam, which is why she is depicted coming to the shore. According to the myth, the ancient Titan Cronus once fought his father, Uranus, the personification of the sky, and at the end of their war, he was able to castrate his father and throw his cut-off organs into the sea, from where Venus emerged. Now, most of us today consider mythological stories like that to be an important part of Renaissance art, but the fact of the matter is that when Botticelli chose to paint this scene, the artistic taste was quite different, and that is at the heart of the controversy. But before we can talk about that, let's take a look at some of the painting's technical marvels. While the painting is nowadays known for its artistic qualities, when it was discovered, the thing that made it stand out was actually its technical details. In fact, one of the most important and interesting things about The Birth of Venus that makes it the first of its kind is the fact that it was painted on canvas. That's right. While almost everyone uses canvases today, in the late 15th century, that was a huge step, as the majority of the paintings of that era were completed on wooden panels. And by using canvas to such great effect, Botticelli was able to introduce the much cheaper and widely available material to the world of high art, changing the course of future paintings. There are also a few technical mistakes. For one thing, Botticelli seems to have forgotten the use of green paint in creating the skin of his characters, which gives the figures a slightly off skin tone. There is also the matter of Horace's sandals, which many people think were added after the painting was completed. In fact, according to most researchers, the painting originally looked a lot different, and Botticelli ended up changing things like Venus's hair color, as well as things like the lighting and many details after it was done. All of which makes the final product look even more incredible, since none of those choices are apparent when looking at it. The controversy. Now, to most of us, all that sounds pretty standard for a painting of the Renaissance era, including things like classical mythology, canvas painting, and some reserved nudity. However, the fact of the matter is, at the time when Botticelli was painting his masterpiece, none of these things were actually commonplace. In fact, two of those things, the classical subject matter and nudity as the central subject of the painting, were why the painting caused so much controversy among the public. You see, at the time, almost all art either depicted scenes from the Bible or from real-life things like portraits and landscapes. But by painting a figure that was the center of pagan mythology in a style that was reserved for church art, Botticelli changed the status of art from something that was controlled by the Catholic Church into something that was universal and old. Another matter was the supposed model for Venus, who by most accounts was a woman named Simonetta Vespucci, the wife of a wealthy and influential Florentine merchant named Marco Vespucci. According to some historians, this Simonetta was one of Botticelli's muses and one of his so-called lost loves. In fact, according to a famous story, one of the painter's dying wishes was to be buried at the feet of the woman whom he loved his whole life. And so his depiction of her as the wife of an important man so centrally in a major painting did not sit well with the Florentine nobility. And her nudity didn't help things either. That being said, the fact that we are talking about the painting means that it not only survived those controversies, but eventually became more important than anyone could have predicted. So let's now turn our attention to the meaning and its legacy. While most people look at the painting as either a masterclass of prose and brushwork or a sensual painting that causes controversy, the birth of Venus is actually as clever as it is beautiful. One of the ways it does that is by representing Plato's idea of how paying attention to physical beauty inspires spiritual growth in a single frame, as while Venus is drawn in a sensual manner, anyone who pays attention to the painting is eventually drawn to the grace, dignity, love, and nature, instead of anything else. There is also the continuation of Christian ideals. That's right. According to many people, this famously un-Christian painting mirrors the Christian tradition of paintings where Christ starts his ministry on Earth by depicting how Venus starts her own ministry on Earth, and by extension, how she starts the ministry of love. And that addition of love as a virtue to the Renaissance is why this painting is so important. Not only did it popularize technicalities like the use of canvases and the act of painting important things for clients other than the church, but it also reintroduced classical mythology and classical ideas back into Western art, all of which ended up giving us the Renaissance that we know today. So it is no surprise that the painting still attracts artists, critics, and historians alike to discuss what it means and what it represents. As for its current whereabouts, the painting now hangs in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, Italy, which is one of the oldest museums in the world, which acquired the painting after the Italian government paid over $500 million to buy it from its original owners. That, and the fact that the painting is still the museum's highlight, even though it houses pieces by the likes of Da Vinci and Michelangelo, is why this painting is so important. Click on any one of the 4 videos on your screen right now.